Ophelia is directed by McCarthy and is basically the story of Hamlet told through the eyes of Ophelia instead of Hamlet, and is also an adaptation of the young adult novel entitled Ophelia. This concept to me is very interesting, and I was anxious to see how it would work on film, and the film I got was not the film I was expecting, and I think that's going to be the case for a lot of people, and I think that can create a very divisive nature amongst the audiences that see this film. I myself had to watch it twice before deciding how I felt about it, and I actually had quite a bit of fun watching it both times. A lot of this is due to the pacing. I think it moves at a really great pace, and a lot of the performances here are very, very good. It's just that the third act of the film goes into a very bizarre direction, and I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. It might have been so bizarre that it worked for me. First thing I'll say off the bat is that this film definitely pushes the envelope as far as what it can do in a PG-13 setting, and I respected the film because of that. I thought that was a very, very cool thing to do, and I think you'll see what I mean, especially going toward the end. And also, as far as the dark themes and the comfortability that you have throughout watching the film, all that is definitely pushing the envelope in terms of a PG-13 movie. I would like to talk about the performers here a little bit. So Clive Owen is actually the best I've seen him in a very long time. He is playing the uncle of Hamlet, and the problem with his performance is his hairpiece. It's just a flaw with the movie. There's no artistic integrity going on with that hairpiece. That hairpiece is distracting, and it unfortunately distracted me from what was actually probably a decent performance from him the first time watching it, and it's just not good. It doesn't look good. It's one of the most distracting things about this movie, and personally, I think it's quite embarrassing. But that being said, if you move that aside, the performance is actually pretty good for me. Tom Felton, for the amount of time he had on screen, was actually excellent. He is playing the brother of Ophelia, and I actually really liked his and Daisy Ridley's on-screen chemistry together, and I think he was one of my more favorite characters in the film, and I actually do commend his performance even though he had a small amount of screen time. Naomi Watts is in this film, and she's actually playing a couple of different roles, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on it. I just want the audience to see what she does here, because I found it to be very interesting. I was not expecting her to play the roles that she did in a certain way. And I actually really liked her performance in this movie. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, it was a really good Naomi Watts performance, and it definitely complimented the movie. Now let's talk about George McKay as Hamlet, because this is the performance I am most conflicted on. And I don't find George McKay to be a bad actor. I may find him to be miscast, mostly because I don't like the on-screen chemistry between him and Ophelia, Daisy Ridley in the film. And there is an argument to be made that maybe the on-screen chemistry wasn't supposed to be on point, but I don't know, because I think their relationship is supposed to feel a little bit uncomfortable at times, and I get that. But while he's given a good performance, I felt he was very awkward with Daisy Ridley, the lead performer, as Ophelia. And I just don't know about it, and I feel like audiences are going to be very divided on this chemistry and his performance. But the nice thing about this is it's not overwhelming in the movie. The character of Hamlet is actually not in this movie as much as you may think. He's in it quite a bit, but not as much as you may think. This movie is actually mostly a character study on Ophelia, which I'll get to now. So Daisy Ridley as Ophelia was fantastic. Perfect casting choice for this, and she honestly knocked it out of the park. Everything that she was supposed to do in this film, she did. She is honestly the best part of this entire damn movie, and I'm happy about that because the focus is primarily on her, and it is a very sort of character study type film with Ophelia. Mostly. There are other characters. There are times that we do take the focus away from Ophelia to focus on other characters. But for the most part, we are kind of studying and observing everything through the eyes of Ophelia. And Daisy really did a very good job at that. Toward the end of the film, in the third and final act, she got to do something very cool with her performance, and you could tell it was just a moment that she really got to tinker with what she was going to do, and you could just tell that she had to have been having a blast doing this as a performer because it really got to show her range, and I quite enjoyed the choices that she made in these moments, even though they were very interesting, and some audiences are going to be divided on her interpretation of the character in these moments. I personally found them to be quite compelling, and I can see as an actress why you would take this role, because it had to be a lot of fun to be able to play with the performance. Now, I think Claire McCarthy really wanted this movie to come off as very divisive. I think that she wanted to take a lot of risks with the film. As I said, it's a young adult novel adaptation, but it doesn't do the usual tropes that we would expect from one of these YA novel adaptations, and that's something that I personally respected about the film, and I think that that's why it stands on its own so much, is the fact that it is so different from your usual YA adaptations, and that to me is something that had to be broken. It had to be shown that you don't have to do the usual YA adaptation tropes in order to make a decent one, and I think Claire McCarthy took a big swing in the way that she wanted to structure this film, and I commend her for that. Another area of this film where I highly commend Claire McCarthy is actually the cinematography. Not so much just that, but the way that the shots look and the way that the shots were set up. I think that for such a low budget, Claire McCarthy definitely made these shots look highly more expensive than they needed to be. It definitely helps you enjoy yourself as you're kind of diving into the world that's set up here. That's something I want to really say about this movie, is that I really enjoy being in this world, and it's kind of what keeps you in it, outside of Daisy Ridley's phenomenal performance as Ophelia. And even though the writing could be wonky and sometimes the movie can feel a little bit messy, and maybe that's just due to the fact that they wanted to have a very different structure, I definitely enjoyed being in this world, and I credit that to Claire McCarthy's directing ability in terms of the tone that she gave it and sort of the pacing of this movie. The pacing is awesome, and I also think a lot of the pacing is due to the score, because the score moves things forward when we have it. It doesn't always have score going on, but when we do have it, the score is actually fantastic. It's one of the better scores I've heard all year. So at the end of the day, Ophelia is going to have a very divisive nature about it amongst audiences. There is an over-reliance on the audience maybe knowing the Hamlet story sometimes, which is a flaw, but hopefully it inspires younger audience members to read some Shakespeare and maybe the Hamlet story, and I hope that's the goal that they were going for, because like I said, sometimes it does feel like the film has an over-reliance on you knowing that story prior to going into this. But I did have a really good time with this movie at the end of the day, and I think it is solid in many, many places, even though it's definitely got some clear flaws going on with it. But I would like to hear how you interpret it, so leave that in the comments below. But for the meantime, I'm going to give Ophelia a B. Guys, this has been my review of Ophelia. I've been Don Martino. I'm going to be leaving my Twitter and Instagram in the description below, so be sure to follow me there. If you want to see more content, please like, subscribe, share this with your friends. I appreciate that very much. This has been my review of Ophelia. I've been Don Martino, and I will see you guys next time.